Well, when you have your former DJ at Mar-a-Lago as your personnel director, and he sends a letter in violation of federal law to try to fire the independent inspectors general of the United States, representing about 17 different agencies, many of which were appointed by Donald Trump, things might not go well. They called it on mainstream media the Midnight Massacre. I don't see it that way. And I don't think you will either after this hot take on Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Take a minute, hit the free subscribe button. Let's get into this hot take. What happened? Midnight Massacre is a phrase that comes out of the 1970s when Richard Nixon tried at the middle of the night to fire all of his U.S. attorneys when he was under criminal investigation and Watergate had just broken. And people stood up against Richard Nixon at the time, and his attorneys general refused to do it until he finally found one who would. That's a midnight massacre. But that's different than here because the inspector generals can't be fired without congressional ultimate approval and a filing by the president explaining why he's compromising the independence of the inspectors general. What are they? Well, let's talk about it. I'm Michael Popok. You're on Legal AF. Time to break it all down for you. Inspectors general are the watchdogs of each federal agencies. Every agency and department has one. They are independent, or they're supposed to be. Yes, they work for the executive branch, just like the Department of Justice, but they don't report directly to the president in that way. They have independent remit. They evaluate on a daily basis funds that are being spent, activities of each department to see if they comply with the law. If there's any illegal activity going on within the agency or department, could be the Department of Justice itself, all the way down to the Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Education. Hundreds and hundreds of departments and agencies all have their own, each agency or department has its own inspector general. And that's a good thing. And in fact, it's a Republican thing because there is a Republican Senate caucus devoted to maintaining the independence of inspectors general after watching the first Trump administration. And what you can't do is you can't fire them without congressional approval. So we get the letter from Sebastian Gore. Who's that, you may be asking? Well, he's an operative for Donald Trump, known for spinning the steel wheels at Mar-a-Lago, doing DJ work. He's also known as the Mar-a-Lago panhandler because he's constantly fundraising for Donald Trump at these events. Very well connected, very efficient and ruthless. You know, he looked efficient and ruthless when he addressed the crowd that nobody knew who he was at the Madison Square Garden event and things like that. And he's been given a top job, head of personnel for the White House and for the government. Not that he's qualified to do that, but, is Pete Hegseth qualified to be the head of the Pentagon? No. So Sebastian Gore writes a letter, and that's what's reported by the mainstream media as being the Midnight Massacre. And he says, because of a change, this is one of my favorite phrases, because of change in priorities, your services will no longer be needed. Now, in Washington, a Freudian slip is when you accidentally tell the truth. And there, Sebastian Gore accidentally told the truth because he said in no uncertain terms that they are not going to be complying with ethics because they've changed their mind. Yeah. About being ethical. That's the change priorities of the Trump administration. He says it out loud. And he says, as a result, I'm going to get rid of you. Now, there's a misunderstanding about how many inspectors general this letter applied to, because Donald Trump didn't fire Michael Horowitz, who's the inspector general for the Department of Justice, of all things, because he likes Horowitz, because Horowitz once came out and was critical of the Mueller investigation and the Russia investigation against Donald Trump. So they kept Horowitz. But it really doesn't matter because it violates law. And what's going to happen is the inspectors general are going to get together. They're going to file a lawsuit probably on Monday or Tuesday, after week one of the Trump administration, and they're going to seek to block this firing. They're going to show up at work on Monday. They're going to do their job. A lot of Republicans are rallying around them already. Chuck Grassley, from Iowa, he says, I don't know, that's not, we got to get to the bottom of why these inspectors general were fired. That they can't do that without congressional notice, reminding them of that. Joni Ernst, who's another senator who's responsible to make sure that the independence of inspectors general don't get compromised. You don't want compromised inspectors general because you can't rely that they're doing their job to ferret out and root out corruption, root out mismanagement, root out a waste of taxpayer dollars, root out rogue conduct and behavior within an agency or department without having them be independent. Yeah, you can't use them as a weapon of the top law enforcement officer that Donald Trump thinks he is. You know, because that's MAGA's belief that in a unitary president model, where all executive power rests with the President of the United States, which, by the way, is supported by a series of MAGA Supreme Court justices. Gorsuch believes that. Kavanaugh believes that. Roberts, on a good day, believes that. Alito and Thomas all believe that. They also believe that because it's all unitary, that everything in that world, there is no independence. They don't want independence. They don't want an independent Department of Justice, and they're not going to have one in the new Trump administration. They don't want an independent FBI, and they're not going to have one. There's going to be regular meetings between Donald Trump, the FBI director, and Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, to go over their case list and investigative files, I assure you. Or with people like Stephen Miller, or maybe Alina Habba, or whoever is in that inner circle as a White House counselor doing the vetting of and giving orders to the Department of Justice and the FBI in a way we've never seen before. They also don't want inspector generals to be out there doing their own thing. And so we're going to see the attempt to completely compromise and co-opt and capture inspectors general. And that's a bad thing for America. What do we do in response? Same thing all the groups did last week. 22 attorneys general from around the country, ACLU, the NAACP, and other groups joined together and filed 3 separate but almost identical lawsuits against Donald Trump's executive orders. And already they've obtained a temporary restraining order, week 1, first 48 hours against Donald Trump's executive orders. That will be the blueprint going forward. And we're going to see the exact same thing happen with the inspectors general. This will be the easiest 10 minutes in a federal judge's day when this case comes before him, likely in the District of Columbia. Now, let me see the letter from Sebastian Gore, the personnel director. You are hereby relieved of your duties immediately. You're changing priorities. Don't give any. It's a boilerplate letter. Yeah. Can I see the statute, please? Statute says, as amended in 2022, you cannot fire without giving Congress 30 days notice and particularized basis for each inspector general as to why you're removing them, to make sure it's not being done for political hack reasons. That's not what the letter says. The letter says it's a mass mailing, a mass firing attempt. It's illegal. So the judge is going to say, I don't think he'll say what I'm about to say, but he's thinking it, or she's thinking it. This is the easiest decision I've had all day. Where's my law clerk? Where's my double capo skinny cappuccino? This violates. Temporary restraining order is entered. This cannot be effectuated. They need to go through a process. This violates that process established by Congress. Good day. Don't let the door hit you on the backside. I added that last part. That's what we're going to see. I'm going to continue to follow it all right here on Legal AF. I'm so glad you're here. This is, I'm not blowing smoke here. This is the place to be. At the intersection of law and politics, the hottest of hot corners. You saw week 1 of the Trump administration. What do you think the next 4 years minus 1 week is going to look like? It may be a hard slog for us and our audience and us here on Legal AF for the next 4 years. But it's going to be not a pretty picture for Donald Trump either. Buckle up, Trump. It's going to be a bumpy ride with federal courts and all these lawsuits brought against you. And I just gave you an outline of how it's going to work here. So until my next hot take, this is Michael Popok, and I'm reporting. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.